Alright guys, welcome back. In this episode, we're going to be going over the week 1 matchups for the 2025-2026 NFL season. And as you can see, we already have the Thursday and Friday game results. So I'm going to try to be getting these videos out a little bit sooner in the week so I can have my full predictions. But I just want to go on the record by saying that I had the Eagles winning and the Chiefs winning. So I'd be 1-1 so far. And stay tuned to the end of the video for giveaway details. The first game that hasn't happened is on Sunday. We have the Bucks versus the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta, 1 o'clock. And honestly, I could see this game going either way. I think the Bucks offense could start off a little slower than expected. They have a new offensive coordinator to get used to. They lost one of probably the best offensive coordinator last year in Liam Cohen to the Jaguars in the offseason. I could see the Falcons offense settling in pretty quickly. They had the continuity of year 2 under Zach Robinson as the offensive coordinator. I thought he did some good things last year. And it's going to be the first season with Penix starting the whole season, barring any injury. And, they've surrounded him with good weapons with Bijan Robinson and Drake London. You can say the same about the Bucks with Mike Evans and Emeka Egbuka. I'm going to be picking the team in this matchup that I think is going to have the better defense. I don't trust either of the defenses, to be honest, but I think the biggest weakness out of both defenses is Atlanta's run defense. I can see Bucky Irving having a big game, and I can also see this game being a high-scoring shootout. If I had to make a prediction for week 1, I would be going with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to beat the Atlanta Falcons. Game 2, like the previous game I was just talking about, the Bucks and the Falcons, I could see this game being another shootout. Both teams lack a defense. I mean, the Browns have, Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, some star power in the defense, but I think overall it's not the greatest defense. In this game, I'm going to be taking the better quarterback, which is obviously Joe Burrow. I don't know how to predict the Browns offense this year with Joe Flacco at the helm. I think it's going to be a pass-heavy offense. I don't know how they're going to do. Quinshon Judkins just signed, but the running backs they have are Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson. I don't know how you can lean on them. I'm going to be picking earlier in the season the Cincinnati Bengals to win. They're just going to have the better offense. They're going to be able to walk down the field with ease. In game 3, we have the Miami Dolphins at the Indianapolis Colts. I'm not the biggest fan of the Dolphins this year. However, I'm not even the biggest fan of the Colts this year. I think the Colts, if they can get some pressure on Tua and make an ugly game, that could obviously favor them. But I think Miami's offense is going to get going fast, and I can't anticipate Daniel Jones leading a comeback, especially in game 1 with the Indianapolis Colts. So for this game, I'm going to be picking the Dolphins to win. I think the Dolphins offense gets off to a hot start, and I don't think that Daniel Jones is going to be able to make a comeback. And then game 4, we have the Las Vegas Raiders at the New England Patriots. The news that broke out earlier today, or if I'm not mistaken, maybe yesterday, is that Christian Gonzalez has been ruled out, which I do think can change the outcome of this game. One of the best premier shutdown corners in the league. But it's tough to predict how the Raiders are going to look. Geno Smith's first start as a Raider, but it's also equally going to be as tough to predict how the Patriots come out and look because it's Mike Vrabel's first game as a coach for the Patriots. But I think the Patriots are going to lean on the run game, and I don't trust the Raiders' run defense to stop the Patriots' run attack. I think Trayvon Henderson can have a big game. I think Ramondre Stevenson can, add to the rushing attack. I know the Raiders have Max Crosby, but they lost Christian Wilkins, who only played 5 games last year. But the defensive line can't be a one-man wrecking crew with Max Crosby, so I think the Patriots will beat them in a closer game, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Vegas Raiders pull this one off. But if I had to make a prediction, I'm picking the Patriots. All right, in the next game, we have the Arizona Cardinals at the New Orleans Saints. I think the New Orleans Saints are one of the worst teams this year. I think they're going to be competing for the number 1 overall pick. The Cardinals could beat the Saints in any way they want. I think the Cardinals defense has multiple turnovers forced, and I think Spencer Rattler is going to be in for a rough game. I'm excited to see Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison's connection in year 2, and I could see them starting off quick. The connection between Marvin and Kyler, I don't think the Saints have any premier shutdown corner. I think the Cardinals can win by their offense or defense, and I'm going to be picking them to beat the Saints. All right, and then the next game we have the Pittsburgh Steelers at the New York Jets. The NFL schedule makers knew what they were doing in this matchup. Both quarterbacks are playing their former teams in week 1, but I expect the Pittsburgh defense, with how highly paid it is and all the stars on the defense, I expect them to shut down the Jets offense pretty easily. We've heard recently that the Jets are going to be trying to enforce a run-heavy offense. They have Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis. They have some quality running backs and some star running backs. So if one running back's starting slower than the other, they can get the other one going. I think they're going to try to get the run game going, but the Steelers' defensive line is one of the best in the league. If they can stop the run, you're forcing Justin Fields to pass the ball. I don't know how much you can trust that at this stage of his career. I think Pittsburgh's offense is going to start pretty slow too. They have a whole new offense, whole new quarterback, whole new wide receiver one. They completely changed this team, but they haven't played any snaps together in the preseason. So I can see their offense coming out pretty slow and potentially let the Jets hang in the game. But I'm going to pick the better defense in this matchup. And I think it's going to be a low-scoring, closer game. I think the Steelers are going to win this game. All right, next game we have is the New York Giants at the Washington Commanders. And this is one of these games where I could see it being an upset, I know Terry McLaurin just signed recently, but he hasn't practiced all offseason, and I could see it taking a couple weeks for Daniels and McLaurin to heat up. I think Russell Wilson plays really conservative, and that if it could be a turnover-free game for the Giants and a time of possession game, I could see them winning this game. And I could also see the Giants' pass rush causing issues for Washington's offense. And if the Giants play a turnover-free game, like I said, I think the defensive line can cause Jaden Daniels some pressure early on. And I'm going to pick the New York Giants to pull off the upset. This is one of the upsets I could see easily happening. All right, the next game we have is, I think, going to be a very sneakily good game. We have the Carolina Panthers at the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm really excited to see this game. We have two young teams with young quarterbacks who were drafted pretty high. Both number one picks, actually. And we have two top picks in this year's draft, Tetairoa McMillan and Travis Hunter. They've had battles throughout high school and college, so it's interesting to see how that goes. The report came out earlier today that Travis Hunter is going to be a every down receiver and a situational cornerback, so we might not see that matchup too often, but it's two young teams, two high-power offenses potentially. It's a fun game to watch. I don't really like either team's defense. When that's the case, I pick the team that I think has more star power on offense, and I'm picking the Jacksonville Jaguars to win this high-scoring game. Like I said, both defenses are pretty bad, but if I had to pick a defense to trust a little bit more, I'm picking the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. The Panthers, Derek Brown and J.C. Horner, but other than that, I'm not too high on them. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game where both defenses look terrible, but I'm going to trust Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, and the Jacksonville running back room a little bit more than the Panthers this year, or in this game, but I could see it going either way. All right, and then the next game we have the Tennessee Titans at the Denver Broncos at 4:05, the first 4:05 game of the year. And be quite frank with you, I think this is a nightmare matchup for Cam Warden's first career NFL start. The Denver defense is going to be great this year. They have the reigning defensive player of the year in Pat Surtain. And like I've been saying all offseason, they've improved in the defense, and they're going to be building on what they've had last year. They signed Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw from the Niners, and I think their defense is only going to get better. It's going to be a stingy defense this year that gives young quarterbacks trouble. And with Tennessee's defense not being the best, I can see Denver winning any way they want. I hope I get proved wrong. I hope Cam Warden has a big game, but it's just unlikely against what could be the top defense in the league this year in Denver. So I'm picking the Broncos to win this game. All right, and then the next game we have the San Francisco 49ers at the Seattle Seahawks. And this game is a tricky game to predict to me. This game depends on if CMC plays. He's been limited in practice the past couple days. With the lack of health at wide receiver, I trust the Seattle's DBs in Tariq Woolen and Devon Witherspoon to lock up Ricky Pearsall and Jawan Jennings early on. If CMC plays, I think the run game can open up the pass game and can allow Shanahan to scheme up some plays for their pass catchers and for the Niners. And I think San Francisco's defense is going to be pretty underrated this year. It's going to be a solid defense. And I'm under the impression that CMC is going to play and that they can use the run game to open up the pass game later on. And I'm going to be picking the San Francisco 49ers to win their Week 1 matchup and beat Sam Darnold in his first start in Seattle. All right, and the next game we have is the Detroit Lions versus the Green Bay Packers. I think this is going to be one of the best games and one of my favorite games to watch this week. I could see either team winning. I think this is the definition of a toss-up game. I'm picking the team that has had more stability this offseason and didn't lose the majority of their coaches and coordinators to other teams. I'm going to be picking the Green Bay Packers in this game, and that's even if Micah Parsons doesn't play, and I think it also benefits him that it's going to be in Green Bay. I don't think the Lions fans realize that, losing all their coordinators and coaches to other teams, they're downplaying the idea. You hear players make plays and everything, but I think they might start off slow this season, but they'll pick it up down the stretch and can be a team that makes a deep playoff run. But NFC North, close. This is going to be a close game. I'm just picking the team that has more continuity and stability. And, I prefer the star power more with the Lions, but I just think Green Bay, it's going to be a divisional game. I just see Green Bay getting the win here, picking up. It's going to be a close, 3-point game. The line right here is -1.5 for Green Bay. So I think, even the odds makers realize how close of a game this is going to be. But I'm picking Green Bay in this matchup. Now, you guys will understand what this means later on, but this is the lock of the week for me. The Houston Texans versus the Los Angeles Rams. I think I made it pretty clear that I'm very behind the Rams this year. With the lack of continuity on the Houston's O-line, I think the Rams pass rush is going to get home multiple times in C.J. Stroud and make it a very, very, very tough game for him. And the Texans offense, it's going to be hard for them to get into rhythm. You heard Christian Kirk's out, and I think with the Rams pass rush and how dominant they're going to be on C.J. Stroud in this game, which I'm projecting, it's going to make it a tough game for the Texans offense to get it going and get it in rhythm. And I think the Rams offense is going to be very good this year. I think Nakua and Adams complement each other so damn well. I like Houston's defense, but I just trust the Rams offense to move the ball better later in the game. This is the lock of the week, which you guys will understand later on. I'm picking the LA Rams to win their week 1 matchup against the Houston Texans. The Rams were -3.5, projected to be a pretty close game. And then the last game for Sunday Night Football, Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson, week 1. We had the luxury of watching one of the top premier quarterback matchups. I think both teams have very well-rounded rosters, and when you're picking a game like this, which can go either way, very close, you kind of have to nitpick stuff. I think both teams have very well-rounded rosters, but I'm picking the Buffalo Bills to win this matchup, and I think it just solely, falls on the fact that it's in Buffalo. If Baltimore gets off to a slow start, the Buffalo fans are going to make it hard for them to get back into it. The Buffalo fans are one of the rowdiest fan bases in the NFL, and I just have a sneaky suspicion. I think the Ravens' offense is going to come out flat-footed and with a little slow start. As much as we want to say it's a good game, I could see this sneakily being a little blowout, and I can see the Bills winning this game pretty easily. But I'm not trying to downplay the fact that the Ravens being good this year. I just think they come out a little flat-footed week 1 and aren't prepared all the way for the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. And finally, Monday Night Football, Minnesota Vikings versus the Chicago Bears. This is going to be a great NFC North matchup. We have 2 young quarterbacks, J.J. McCarthy versus Caleb Williams, facing off. I'm not the biggest believer in Chicago's defense. However, I think McCarthy could struggle in his first career start for a young quarterback. I could also see Kevin O'Connell trying to drop some easy completions for J.J. McCarthy to get him going. But I think the Bears' offense is going to be a little bit explosive and that can have a lot of big plays. The one worry for me is if the Bears have a lot of pre-snap penalties, they could shoot themselves in the foot and cost them. But overall, I like the chance of explosive plays. And I'm not saying the Vikings can't, but year 2 Caleb Williams over year 1 J.J. McCarthy, I'm picking the Chicago Bears to win this one. And then to get into the giveaway details, what I'm going to be doing this year is every single week I'm going to have one game where I have lock of the week, which is the Rams versus the Texans. If I predict wrong, I'm going to be adding $25 to a pot. So you have 17 chances to get $25 added to the pot for lock of the week. And in this first week, like I said, I have the Rams. So if I get it wrong, I'm going to be adding $25 to a pot. And at the end of the year, I'm going to be giving it away to one of the subscribers. Say, for example, I get 10 of the lock of the weeks wrong, God forbid. I'll be owing one of my subscribers $250. So make sure to subscribe and like the video and stay active. At the end of the year, I'm going to be keeping track of all my predictions and everything. And if I'm under 65% on total predictions, I'm also going to be adding another $25 to give away to the Make sure you're subscribed so you have a chance to get the $25 each week. It'll be added up at the end of the year in one big pot. So each lock of the week that I get wrong will be added in. Plus, if I'm under 65%, right now I'm 1-1. Each week I'll give you the record breakdown of how I'm doing and everything. But like I said, make sure you guys are subscribed and like the video. Thanks for staying to the end of this video. And stay tuned for next week's Week 2 predictions. I'm going to get them out a little bit earlier so I have more fair of a record prediction. Like I said, I had the Eagles winning and the Chiefs winning. I'll see you guys next week.